Story 1. My mother homeschooled me in elementary school by handing me textbooks in September and telling me to finish them by June. In 5th grade, I got fed up with the 200-plus question problem sets and simply stopped doing math. She asked to review my work around May, and when she realized I hadn't been doing it, she grounded me by removing and locking up everything from my room except a week's worth of clothes, a Bible, and a blanket to sleep with. This was successful because she continued to discipline me by enrolling me in public school for the next year. Attending actual school and getting socialized properly is the only reason I'm remotely okay today. Story 2. My dad spanked me once for stealing something from another kid's bag in the cloakroom at school. I was also grounded for 2 weeks. That lasted a few days until he was informed by the teacher that she was wrong. She had believed the word of another student who was later caught red-handed doing it again when they blamed me and told my parents she caught me. I had professed my innocence but was ignored. That was the last time I was spanked unless he personally caught me, and I don't think my mom ever did it again. I remember her telling me she felt horrible because they realized not only could they not take it back, but I no longer had any reason to tell them the truth since even if I did, they would not believe me. My message is, don't act on what others tell you just because they are adults. A kid is a kid. Story 3. My parents used a reverse drastic measure. They told me for every near-perfect score on a test, they would let me skip school for a day. I started getting really good grades, but also ended up being bored at home because I liked learning and missed my friends at school. So I did not really end up using my sick days a lot and got really good grades. Story 4. I think it was here on Reddit where a couple had a son who, in 5th grade, was bullying a classmate from a poverty-stricken home about his clothes and that he got free lunch. Their son was doing things like cutting more holes in the boys' shirts and throwing his lunch on the floor, in addition to destroying his completed schoolwork. Their son was always turning punishments around on the boy, saying things like, "I lost my handheld gaming device because of you." When they received yet another call from the school, she called her husband at work and said, "Okay, it's time." Her husband left work early, and they removed everything from his room and took all his 5th grade clothes. They took out the 4th grade clothes they were going to donate to a thrift store, and he had to wear them to school wrinkled until he learned his lesson. They also ordered pizza from his favorite place but did not let him eat any of it. He was fed, just not allowed to eat that. They took his belongings to a nearby grandparent's house until they felt he had learned his lesson. Took a few days, but eventually he did realize that they meant business. Story 5. My son, now 22, went through a rough patch around age 14. Running with the wrong crowd, trying to be cool, and so on. He was suspended from school for a week. I obtained permission from my workplace for him to accompany me as a volunteer for the entire week. He worked very hard and was rewarded by participating in resident activities. He held 2 parrots and watched them perform a show, among other things. He never got suspended again. He tells me now that it was a great decision because he did not get to relax and enjoy himself like his friends. He had to work harder than he would have in school but still ended up with some great memories with me, even though he was upset at the time. Story 6. My parents canceled cable in the 1980s when my brother was doing poorly in school. The thing is, he didn't watch a lot of TV. I did. They also took the power cord for our Nintendo Entertainment System. Again, he didn't play it. I don't know if they got us confused or just thought, the television is always on, it has to be the reason. Story 7. My parents broke my belongings when they were mad at me or broke things nearby and took my allowance to pay for the damage. My mom smashed 2 collectible piggy banks I had. One was hand-painted and brought back from a vacation specifically for me. 12-year-old me tried to glue them back together with wood glue. Later, she smashed one of my absolute favorite belongings, a metal turtle lamp with a frosted amber glass shell. I loved turtles as a kid and saw one of the lamps in a store and begged for it for months. I got it for my birthday. When this one broke, I did not bother trying to glue it back together. I thought this was normal until I read something online about it not being normal and turned to my husband and asked if his parents ever did that to him. He looked at me in horror. If you cannot regulate your emotions and rage around your children, how do you expect them to learn to regulate theirs? Story 8. I never really did anything drastic with either of my children. However, my parents were really into drastic measures. They once left me at home alone to punish me for not wanting to go to school and took my sister to Disneyland for 3 days. They eventually sent my grandmother over to collect me from the empty house. 8-year-old me never got over that. There is a clear difference between how I saw my parents before that incident and after. Not to mention, the only reason I did not want to go was because my undiagnosed poor vision was giving me headaches that made me vomit. It was not even me misbehaving. I was scared. Story 9. I had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and undiagnosed autism. Undiagnosed in the way that I was not officially diagnosed, but my mother knew for a fact as she worked with disabled children. I was given zero support in school, which eventually led to me failing almost every class throughout the years. My dad was former Air Force, and the punishments were very much along those lines. Beaten, cleaning the shared bathroom with a toothbrush, losing my door, losing my bed, you name it. When I had a meltdown, they would hold me down and cover my mouth to keep me quiet so the neighbors could not hear. They cannot understand why I hate being touched, why I always lock my door, why I am a neat freak, and why I have zero self-esteem. Punishment should not make your child afraid of you. If that happens, you failed as a parent. She disclosed recently that I am, in fact, diagnosed with autism. I have been since I was little, which makes it all that much worse. Story 10. I am an instructor at a trade school. I do not have children of my own, but I work with young adults every day. I recently had to put a student on academic probation because they lined up a bunch of empty bottles in the hallway and played bowling with a mannequin head. I have never laughed so hard in my life, but unfortunately the school's director witnessed the mannequin bowling, and I had to punish the student. She is doing well in class, and I know she will graduate. However, if you are going to do something funny, at least make sure no one is watching. Story 11. My son would not and could not stop skipping school. We told him if he ditched class again, we would pull him out. He could get his general educational development certificate when he was ready. He ditched again and again, and we did not act until finally, the last time he got caught. We pulled him out, and he cried in the principal's office, begging us, "Please, don't do it," and asked for another chance. He was 17. He got a job, earned his general educational development certificate, and realized his circle of friends was not good for him. He went to college, earned a degree in pharmacy, has been married for 10 years, and thanks us for what we did. Would we do it again? Yes, even though it was painful at the time. Story 12. No. I was sent away to military school at the age of 12. I swore I would never do anything like that to my children. There is a way to get the message through without damaging them for the rest of their lives. Story 13. My son was a huge reader to the detriment of everything else. I ended up taking his books away until he finished his work and got himself back on track. I felt like the worst mom ever. Who takes their kids' books away? But I knew that would affect him the most, and it worked. Story 14. In my freshman year of high school, I had an English teacher who was known by both students and staff for being unreasonably strict and unforgiving with grading. She would take off a point in a Shakespeare memorization exercise for writing A instead of the another for missing a comma, and so on. I don't think she had any students get above a B on report cards, and even that was rare. She proudly announced this during her introduction on the first day of school. I brought home either a D or an F. I can't remember which. My dad built a massive wooden crate and put every single thing I owned inside, except for pillows, blankets, clothes, and my childhood stuffed animal. He locked it and told me I would get my things back when I brought home a C or higher. I was also grounded, which included no TV, no computer, no seeing friends at their house or mine, and no listening to music. I think I got very limited time to call my best friend and my boyfriend. I wasn't allowed any books outside of what I needed for school. Mind you, I was mostly a straight A student with the occasional B, and English was my strongest subject. I turned in every assignment I studied, and I put everything I had into that class, but it made no difference. I barely managed to pull my grade up high enough on my last report card. If I hadn't, the punishment was going to continue through the summer and the first quarter of the next school year. In the end, I had nothing and no one for 3/4 of the school year. Afterward, My dad kept the box in the garage and liked to remind me periodically that he would be happy to use it again if needed. Story 15. My parents were not usually the type to take extreme measures, but one time when I was in middle school, my grades started declining because I became very interested in online gaming. They gave me a few warnings, but I did not take them seriously. One weekend, while I was at a friend's house, they went through my room and confiscated my entire gaming setup. Console, controllers, everything. I came home to find nothing but an empty desk where my setup used to be. I was furious at the time, but I will admit it worked. My grades improved, and they gave me my equipment back after a month. Looking back, it was harsh, but it gave me a real wake-up call. Story 16. My parents yelled at me a lot and punished me for my grades. It turns out that does not actually help. I flunked out of college and had a breakdown because I had tied my personal worth to my grades. The one thing that did help with my grades was when my parents offered a reward for good grades instead of punishments for bad ones. Story 17. Yes, I had to take a drastic step once. My teenager was consistently failing to complete homework and becoming increasingly distracted by video games. After several warnings, I decided to take away all gaming devices for an entire month. The first week was difficult with many arguments and frustration, but over time, I noticed a positive change. My child started focusing more on schoolwork, grades improved, and we even had more family time together. It was tough but worth it in the end. Sometimes, setting firm boundaries is necessary to help children get back on track. Story 18. My dad called me D for an entire semester in high school because I got a D in algebra on my report card. I do not recommend doing that. My daughter also struggles in math, so we let her know that as long as she tries, that is all that matters. We help her understand math concepts in her homework and work with her teacher if she needs extra support. Story 19. Grounded her from favorite activities. She worked hard to earn them back. Story 20. Had him spend a weekend studying with friends. It was fun and productive. Story 21. I proudly tried. I raised children with developmental issues. Fortunately, they taught me that when they became cranky and uncooperative, they had grown and I had missed it. When I gave them more responsibility, they became happier and more confident. By the time they were 15, they could run the house. Story 22. Late to this party, but my child did not care if you took away his belongings when he got in trouble. He simply did not care. He would find other entertainment with basically nothing. Instead of taking things away anytime he got in trouble, we scheduled a family trip to the food bank for 2 to 3 hours of packing food for those less fortunate. He has not gotten in trouble at school for the last year and a half, so I would say it is working. Story 23. Grounded my daughter for lying about her homework. She learned to be honest. Story 24. I got punished for having undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Didn't empty the dishwasher? Grounded. Didn't do homework? Grounded. Got poor grades? Grounded. Between constantly being grounded for things like this, I was extremely socially anxious and shy. My parents could never understand why I didn't have friends. I would cry every night in middle school because I wanted friends and had a tough time making them. On top of that, I could almost never hang out with them because I was literally always grounded. I was not a bad kid. I was the quiet girl who avoided attention at all costs. They still can't understand why I am 33 and introverted. Story 25. I have 4 children. 1 in high school, 1 in middle school, and 2 in elementary school. I am very lucky that they are bright and disciplined, so I do not have to do much. However, you absolutely have to stay on them, review their homework, help with test preparation, and make sure they understand the topics. You should never let it get to the point where drastic measures are needed. It takes less effort to help them along than to correct course when they are struggling. If you have to resort to drastic punishment, the problem began a while ago. Story 26. She wrote a reflective essay on her education. It was a productive exercise. Story 27. My parents left me on the curb at the age of 3 for not getting into the car. Honestly, most of my adult life has reflected this exploitation of the power dynamic both inside and outside of the family. Story 28. Anytime I got a grade below a C+, I was grounded for the entire marking period following the report card. Many nights were spent sitting at the dining room table with my father, who became increasingly drunk and angry when I did not understand something, usually math. Fast forward 30 years later, diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and dyscalculia. Story 29. My father threatened to send me to military school to straighten me out, until he realized I was excited about the possibility. After reading more of the comments, I want to add that tough love acts always backfire. Always. Story 30. No. I experienced a lot of pressure as a child regarding school, and I refused to put that pressure on my children. Both of them finished high school and are now employed adults. Story 31. When I was about 9 years old, my mother and stepfather punished me for making fun of another kid's haircut by dragging me into the bathroom shower and cutting my hair rather drastically. They left one long piece in the back, more like a rat tail than a mullet, and asked me if I wanted to keep it. It made my already bad new haircut look even more ridiculous, so I told them to cut it off. I am 61 now and absolutely hate getting my hair done, but I do it about once a year. Obviously, I have never had fashionable hair. Story 32. My son gave me attitude in 8th grade. I issued him a detention. At school, we handle it the school way. At home, the home way. He was in my art class. One of his friends remarked halfway through the school year that he had no idea my son was my son because I treated him like everyone else. Other teachers clearly and overtly treated their own kids special. At home, he got special treatment. Story 33. I am not a parent because I already struggle with self-acceptance. My mother beat me and screamed at me for getting a C on my math homework. That's why I gave up on striving for good grades after being an honor roll student until that point. I only did the bare minimum necessary to avoid failing any classes because I would have dropped out before staying in school any longer than necessary. I did not even attend the graduation ceremony. Nothing I did was ever good enough to satisfy the people in my life, and I am not wasting time or energy pretending otherwise. Story 34. My child with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, inattentive type, was having problems handing in assignments in high school. They did the work. We had a specific time when all homework was done at home. After school activities ended, everyone came home. As I cooked supper, everyone sat and did homework, which I helped with while cooking. No electronics or anything else were allowed until everyone was done. The three of them encouraged and helped each other as well. Extra studying was done before they went to sleep, and they could read then as well. But this child was not handing in completed assignments. This is common with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, inattentive type. It sounds strange to do the work and not submit it for credit. I know, but it happens. They were told they would not go on the band end-of-year trip if 95% of all future assignments were not turned in. You might think it should be 100%, but you do not know this child. They were turning in about 7%. Again, they were doing the assignments. I saw them done with my own eyes. It's hard to believe, but they are currently in graduate school and have a job at an actual university, so they have free tuition at that university. They also went on the band trip to Canada. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is challenging. If you do the assignments but just do not turn them in, you pass the test because you do the work, but you don't get homework credit. It's frustrating. Story 35. On the other side of this, my parents frequently punished me because of my grades. We do not communicate anymore. Story 36. My dad took away the door to my bedroom when I was a freshman in high school because I got my first ever C in my first semester of advanced placement biology. He did this to make sure I was studying when I was supposed to be. I was also not allowed to read any books except ones he chose. At the time, I read an average of 2 science fiction books a week. It worked out. I read some classics like Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, and Frankenstein, and I worked my way back to an A for the next semester. I graduated 4th in my class of 430 with a 5.89 weighted grade point average. So it worked out. The person who graduated 2nd in my class is now the Chief Operating Officer of Restaurant Brands International, the parent company of Burger King. So I guess I should have tried harder. Story 37. When my grades went down, My mom decided to put me in homework hell, where I had to do a bunch of extra worksheets for no school credit. If I brought home anything better than a C, I got punished. It made me utterly despise math because my mom was a horrible math teacher. She would frequently lose her temper, mock me, and talk down to me, all while saying, "You should love this," and "this should be your favorite subject." She still argues, well, it worked, didn't it? It caused me genuine anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. I had traumatic flashbacks throughout school until college. I was so terrified of calculus that I changed my college major. Story 38. Not me, but my parents. In high school, I discovered that if I skipped school, my punishment would be a one-day suspension. You were allowed 4 of those per year before it affected your grade point average. So that's 8 days off school each year. Awesome, right? By the 3rd suspension, my parents figured out what I was up to. They took my car away. Mind you, I purchased it, insured it, and filled it with gas all with my own money. I have no idea where they parked it. It was gone for a month. Definitely got my attention. In hindsight, I could have called the police on them for grand theft auto, but I didn't even think of that as an option. Story 39. Poor school performance can be caused by bullying, abuse, substance use, medical issues, learning disabilities, or mental health struggles. Please try to identify the root cause before taking any drastic actions. Story 40. I remember many years ago my parents thought I was spending too much time on YouTube when I should have been studying for examinations. As a result, my father blocked YouTube on our router and would only unblock it when he got home from work at night. Instead of studying, which I was doing anyway, just not when they wanted, my new focus was to find ways to work around the block. I quickly learned that embedded video players on other websites worked, so I would go to Twitter or another website and watch the full video through the embedded YouTube player. I explained this to my mother and father eventually and said it would save all of us time if he just unblocked it so I could watch everything with my morning coffee and then start studying as I usually did. Story 41. I was the child, not the parent, but my mother once started choking me for doodling on the side of my homework instead of working on it. I still, more than 20 years later, do not trust her. Story 42. Took her phone until she received a better report card. It worked, although she detested it. Story 43. When my daughter was in kindergarten, she went through a stealing phase. She went into someone's bag and took their markers. I made her buy new ones. Then her sister got to have her face painted while she stayed home with me to do yard work. She was very jealous of the face painting and never stole again. Story 44. My old man's default was what many would call drastic measures. I ended up with a C average one year. That summer, he made me his slave. From sunrise to sunset, I was at his beck and call. No matter what chore he gave me, I had to do it in the hardest possible way. Cutting down a tree with an old rusty axe, no gloves. I had blisters on blisters, and it took me weeks to get that tree down. Then I had to remove the roots. This was easier than his preferred method of discipline, beating me severely. We are not close. Story 45. Oh my God. This is the worst thing we teach parents. People literally learn to read in their 60s. Your child is not going to die if they are not a perfect student. They can always learn academics, but you only get one chance at a relationship. I am not saying do not care, but not every child is an academic. Not being an academic does not make your child a loser either. Story 46. I never really disciplined my ex-girlfriend's daughter. She got into some trouble, but so did I at her age. There was a girl bullying her, and I told her to punch her in the face if she ever messed with her again. A couple of days later, the school called me and wanted me to pick her up because she hit the bully so hard that she was bleeding. I said, "Good for her, since you don't do anything about bullying." I took her out for ice cream and told her I was proud of her. Story 47. When puberty hit me, a combination of depression, apathy, and antisocial behavior hit me hard. Starting in 8th grade, I just stopped doing anything. I would show up to school but refuse to do anything other than take tests or sleep. If anyone even slightly offended me, I would fly off the handle. I went from being a gifted honor student to straight Fs. My parents tried everything they could think of. I spent a year grounded, so I refused to come out even when they wanted me to. When they whipped me, I would scream at them to hit me harder. Eventually, I got into physical fights with both my parents, which I still regret today. My father told me he was going to send me to a military school. I told him they couldn't do anything worse than what he had already tried, so he might as well waste the money if it meant getting rid of me. It got worse and worse until by the end of the school year I had officially failed the grade, and everyone, friends, family, and school staff, gave up on me. I finally got what I felt I wanted, which was for everyone to leave me alone. It felt good at first to win, but eventually it just became emptiness. I fell further into depression and planned my suicide. I prepared several attempts during high school secretly but talked myself out of them when the time came. Story 48. Not answering, but when I have seen this happen to children, no matter what they did, it fills me with dread and anger. Those poor individuals are being broken for life. Talking about taking away furniture like beds, doors, food, what is actually happening? Story 49. Pops broke my arms because my bicycle was stolen after he took my lock. Story 50. Oh yeah, I took away my son's internet for a week after he tried to lie about his grades. He acted like it was the end of the world. But the funny part was that he actually started reading books. Turns out boredom works wonders. Story 51. I had to double-check your question because many people were replying about the disciplinary measures their parents used on them, not what you actually asked. Story 52. I have a slightly different story from many others. When I was a child, I did not do my homework for obvious reasons. I preferred playing video games with my friends over doing math problems. My mother took away my computer and other privileges and made me complete my homework. This experience taught me two valuable life skills that have helped my career to this day. First, complete the tasks you have to do before the tasks you want to do. Second, submitting incomplete work is often better than submitting nothing, as something will often slip through the cracks when nothing is submitted. Always turn something in. Story 53. My dad once threw the new televisions he had just bought for my brother and me down the stairs because we did not show appreciation. He would throw our clothes out the window if they were not put away. He left the military when I was 13. Life got easier after that. Story 54. I had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and executive functioning issues, but my parents did not know what that was. As a result, I had to carry a paper to my teachers every Friday and have them all sign that I had completed my assignments in full and on time. Otherwise, I would be locked in my bedroom all weekend, which had been cleared of everything except my school books. I was allowed out for meals and to use the bathroom. I still remember lying by the air conditioning vent so I could hear the television and people talking. Story 55. I had undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so I had perfect behavior in school but never did any homework or learned anything in class. My parents beat me at least twice a week, with increasing savagery as their stress levels rose from other parts of their lives. When I got old enough to physically defend myself, they gave up and sent me overseas to a cheap boarding school with little supervision and friendly teachers. My grades went to straight A's by the first term. I did eventually get my diagnosis during medical school. Story 56. Not the parent, but the kid. I went to a boarding school. This was around when broadband and wireless internet were just becoming a thing. I was friends with troublemakers who liked causing a bit of mischief. They discovered that if you put a towel over a toilet, then filled the toilet with body spray, removed the towel, and threw a match inside, you would get a small explosion. They thought it was hilarious and did this at night when everyone went to bed. They came to my door to get me involved, but I was already asleep and my door was locked, so I missed the whole thing. Eventually, one explosion was a bit too much. They blew up the toilet, and it was so loud that they caught the caretaker's attention and got caught. I literally woke up to find them at the dining hall looking sheepish. They told me they got caught and were expecting to be suspended. They admitted they tried to wake me up but couldn't. Being a teenager, I found the whole situation hilarious. I was close friends with them, close enough that people, including teachers, thought I was involved. Even the head teacher screamed at me before realizing I was not involved and apologized. About 2 weeks later, it was half-term, so I went home. My dad found out about the toilet incident from my friend's parents and asked why I was not involved. I decided to be honest and said that I was asleep. He asked if I had been awake, would I have been involved. I thought and then admitted that I would have been involved due to peer pressure. He promptly banned me from using the internet for the whole half-term. I learned 2 life lessons from this. You can be punished for being associated with certain people, and honesty is not always the best policy. Story 57. I don't believe in reactive discipline. I believe in self-discipline and learning from behaviors. If a child is having serious problems in school and your first reaction is how can I punish them, I can see why they're having trouble. Story 58. The most drastic thing I ever did was create a contract for my teenage daughter to sign. She was hanging out with the wrong crowd and going down a bad path, so I wrote some basic rules and consequences for breaking them, such as taking her license away, pulling her out of sports, and taking her phone for certain offenses like drugs. She was not happy, but she signed it and we got through that stage. She is now a doctor, and we have a great relationship. One more story, but this one is about me growing up. My mom passed away when I was 2, and my dad remarried when I was 6. I struggled with friends and life in general and did not do well in school as a result. My stepmother did not feel that my grades were good enough at the end of 3rd grade, so I was grounded to my room the entire summer. I could only come out for the bathroom and meals. I got to watch all the neighborhood boys play baseball, football, and ride bikes right outside my window all summer. I hated her with every part of my body, and after I left the house, I cut off all relations with her. Story 59. I had a lot of trouble in school. I have a learning disorder, and as it turns out, I am autistic. My parents were always very supportive about my grades and the difficulties I faced. They never criticized me about it. Usually, they had to deal with some very bad teachers that I had, and my poor school district. 3 teachers were nearly fired over their treatment of me. Story 60. Removed all entertainment until grades improved. He was motivated to change. Story 61. After a year of struggling with my 6 to 7-year-old overdoing his homework after school and trying to get him to read, I made a drastic decision. I pulled him from public school and enrolled him in a very small private school that follows the Montessori model. At the public school, we clearly faced pressure to medicate his attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which I am not opposed to if it will help him learn, but I do not think it is necessary for him right now. They also would not provide the extra math enrichment he needed to actually want to learn math, as he is a couple of grades ahead. They do not recognize twice exceptional as a concept. Obviously, the giftedness should cancel out the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and he should just be able to do the regular work like everyone else. At the new school, there is no homework because they follow the scientific literature. It is full of other children who are all a bit neurodiverse. They are taught radical acceptance of others. The school is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and other affirming and participates in the Pride Parade in town every year. He is learning multiplication and division with all the enrichment I could want as a math-loving parent. My favorite aspect is that they specifically focus on intrinsic motivation, so hopefully he will avoid the trap many children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder fall into, where you do not have to try if you are smart. He is much happier, and I am mostly happier as a result. I have to pack a lunch for him every day and drive him across town, so it is not without sacrifice, but it works. He is reading chapter books and sometimes reads at home, and he is back to loving math. In this case, it was not the child who needed discipline. It was the school system. Since I cannot easily change that, I removed him from the situation instead. No regrets. Story 62. My child was ruthlessly bullied by another student at school, and the student's parents did nothing to help. I orchestrated an accident involving the parents, took parts of their bodies, and then tricked the bully into eating his own parents during a chili cook-off contest. Story 63. I was notorious for ditching in my sophomore year of high school because I lived right across the street. My mom finally found out one day. She worked for the school district my school was part of, so she was bound to find out at some point. Of course, she was livid and took away my key to our place. I had to leave when she left for work and couldn't go home until she was home. After about a month of that, she gave me my key back. I never ditched again, and my attendance was solid until I graduated. That definitely reflects in my adult life now because I've had mostly great attendance at all the jobs I've worked. I have never missed work without calling or showing up late without notice. I'm punctual and I always make sure to communicate with my managers, bosses, or clients if I can't come in or if I'm going to be late. I don't think I would be as on top of things like that if my mom never found out I was ditching at home, watching cartoons. Story 64. All I remember from my childhood is my mother screaming and crying about my grades. I think I had attention deficit disorder or something. Story 65. As long as I passed, they did not care. Talk about encouragement. Story 66. Called into school for middle son's 8th grade year due to fighting on the school bus. It turns out he got sick of a bully who was always being mean to another kid and stood up for him. There were a couple of swings, nothing serious. The principal suspended him for 5 days and asked what I would be doing in addition. I said, taking him to McDonald's and letting him play video games when he is done with the schoolwork you need to give him for those 5 days. The administrators were visibly upset, and I simply said, I don't punish him for doing something that makes me proud. Story 67. Took away his telephone for 1 month. He learned to manage his time better. Story 68. I once had all my makeup hidden, which was very personal to me. I went to school feeling shy and anxious, but it worked. I never misbehaved again because I felt insecure at the time. Story 69. Yes, I had to take some measures once. We started working evenings where we both did homework. I did my work and he did his school assignments. Story 70. We have consequences, but they fit the crime. An extra chore for the week, losing his electronics, and having to pick up garbage around school to give back to the faculty who are being disrespected. Story 71. I'm a single mother who has been struggling with my 16-year-old son's school issues lately. His teacher called to express concerns about his behavior, and I felt that something had to change. My nephew, who is the same age and also into gaming, manages to balance school and his hobbies really well. After several warnings to my son, I took a serious step. While he was at school, I had my nephew delete his PlayStation 5 game saves to help him refocus on his studies. Completely backfired. Now he has locked himself in his room, shouting and swearing at me from behind the door, refusing to go to school or eat. I really just wanted him to understand the importance of his education, but now I am worried I have pushed him too far. Has anyone else experienced this? How can I fix our relationship and help him get back on track? Story 72. Disabling internet access on their devices at key times forced them to adjust their sleeping habits for the better. Their grades quickly improved. Story 73. My most drastic measure was grounding my middle school-aged daughter from reading. She was reading rather than doing her schoolwork, so we had to restrict her ability to read for about a month and be more watchful of her time management. Story 74. When I was a kid, my parents regularly forbade me from playing video games because I didn't do my homework. It was a regular occurrence that after the first quarter, I wouldn't get video games for a while, usually based on how much homework I was assigned. The problem was that I'd rather do nothing than do homework, for whatever reason. I think it was because I felt it was useless work, in the sense that I accomplished nothing, not that I earned a grade. They tried a few strategies like rewarding completed work with weekend playtime. After a while, they approached me a couple of times asking what they could do to help, if there was something else that might work. I didn't know what they could do myself, but I remember one time when I gave a suggestion. Game time on weekends is free, earn game time on weekdays in small amounts. It was a variation of what they tried before. They laughed in my face. That is not how you communicate good faith or willingness to budge, let alone compromise. I just walked out of the room. Nothing changed for the rest of my high school days. I'm guessing they were just at their wits' end, and my father is one of those people whose idea of compromise is that they are always correct. There are more resources available now than there were 15 years ago. I still don't know what I would have needed, but I was lucky not to need any outstanding grades in either high school or college. Just do not laugh in their face if they suggest something. Talk it out. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.